The fog rolled in thick and heavy, blanketing the small town of Eldridge in an oppressive hush. It was the kind of mist that seemed alive, clinging to buildings and crawling down streets like the fingers of ghosts. As the clock struck midnight, the townspeople locked their doors and drew their curtains tight. It was known. The fog had a sinister reputation. Claire, however, had always been skeptical of the tales. She scoffed at the old wives' warnings of spirits that haunted the streets after dark. With her curiosity ignited, she decided to wander out, drawn to the allure of the unknown. She stepped outside, her breath hanging in the air like wisps of smoke as she ventured into the unwelcoming veil of fog. As she walked, the world around her distorted into shadows. Familiar street lamps dimmed and flickered, casting long, grotesque silhouettes. Each step echoed like a lonely heartbeat, and Claire felt an unsettling intensity press upon her chest. The streets appeared deserted, yet she sensed something lurking just beyond her peripheral vision. The fog swirled in unnatural patterns, whispering secrets that tickled the back of her mind. It felt as if it held memories, fading fragments of lives lost in its depths. Claire paused, a chill creeping along her spine, and turned to head back. But the silence was absolute, swallowing her presence like an insatiable beast. The way home seemed to shift, with streets elongating or narrowing as though the fog was toying with her. It wasn't long before she noticed shadows darting just shy of her line of sight. A pair of eyes gleamed momentarily before disappearing into the haze, leaving her heart pounding. Were they animals, or something darker, hidden beneath the flimsy veil of mist? Each time she attempted to retrace her steps, something shifted in the atmosphere, pulling her deeper into the maze of nothingness. Panic began to claw at her throat as she quickened her pace, the shadows multiplying around her. She felt watched, exposed. As she turned around yet again, she finally caught a clear glimpse of one form, small, huddled, and eerily human. A child's figure, ghostly pale, stood motionless, eyes wide and glistening as though pleading for her to stay. Claire paused, a mix of dread and empathy flooding her senses. "Help me," the child said, in a voice thin as mist, the syllables twisting and curling in the air. "They're coming." Before she could respond, a swarm of figures surged from the fog, twisted, tortured silhouettes that seemed to rise from the ground itself. They stretched out hunched fingers, mouths opening in silent screams, their faces obscured by the darkness of the fog that enveloped them. Claire felt rooted to the spot, frozen by the sudden realization that these entities were not lost souls. They were hungry. "Run!" the child cried, but it was too late. The figures converged like a tide, the air thick with their desperation and despair. Claire turned and sprinted, her lungs burning, every instinct screaming for survival. But she was lost, spiraled deeper into the labyrinth of fog, weaving through a nightmare with no end. She could hear the whispers growing louder, entreaties for release blending into a cacophony of unreal sorrow. The ground shifted beneath her, pulling her down as if it sought to claim her. With one last surge of strength, Claire pushed through the encroaching fog, arms outstretched toward a faint glimmer of light she thought was salvation. Emerging from the mist, she stumbled into the familiar street of Eldridge. The world was unchanged, untouched by the horrors she'd barely escaped. Her heart raced in disbelief. It was as if she had awoken from a terrible dream. She turned, intent on giving voice to her experience, but there was only silence. To her shock, Clara found herself staring into the face of the very child she'd seen in the fog, standing innocently at the edge of the street. This time the child smiled, and the gleam in their eyes was no longer fearful, it was knowing. "Welcome home," they whispered, and Claire realized with dread that she hadn't escaped after all. The fog embraced her once more, thickening around her from all sides as the figures drifted back into their formation. Eldridge belonged to the mist, and now she would too,